anymore. Question number 6, Grant Robertson.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance. Is his reported statement from May this year correct that, quote, Bill English says if he and John Key disagree on what to do with next year's expected surplus, pay down debt or cut taxes, what the Prime Minister wants, the Prime Minister gets?
The Honourable Bill English.
Speaker, no, the statement's not correct.
Supplementary question,
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Does he agree with the Prime Minister's statement when asked how much was needed for a meaningful tax cut? Quote, $3 billion, I reckon, end quote.
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr Speaker, that certainly would be meaningful, but really only a national-led government can contemplate that because we focus on controlling expenditure and making sure it gets results, and that's why we've got surpluses, so we've got some choices.
Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Does he think now is the right time to offer a $3 billion tax cut when there are people living in cars and garages and when he himself has identified, quote, intractable social problems, end quote, that need to be addressed after 8 years of government?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the government has been seeking to address intractable social problems from the day it took office in 2008 and has made considerable progress on changing the way government does its job so that we're not just shoveling money out the way Labor always say we should, but focusing on getting better results for people, not bigger budgets for agencies.
Mr Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Does he believe now is the right time for a $3 billion tax cut?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, the member will just have to wait and see. We've got annual accounts coming out on Thursday, a half-year update before Christmas, and then by budget 2017, the member might just find out what the government thinks about that.
Supplementary. Order. Supplementary.
Sure is.
Order. Supplementary question. The right Honourable Prime Minister.
To the Minister of Finance. Does the Minister of Finance think that he might have choices on how to spend the government's resources when an economy grows at 3.6%, has one of the fastest wage growths in the last 8 years, when the government's books are back in surplus, when the unemployment rates...
Order. The question's been asked. It doesn't need to be a speech. The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, as often happens as a result of our discussions, I can say to the Prime Minister, yes, yes and yes.
Speaker.
Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is paying down debt and investing in infrastructure a greater priority for him than tax cuts?
The Honourable Bill English.
Well, Mr Speaker, it has up to now, that's for sure. I mean, the government is investing, the government's infrastructure program ranging from revamping our social housing stock through to rebuilding our old schools, through to roads, through to digitalising government, has grown very considerably in recent years, and that's clearly been a higher priority than tax reductions.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
How much actual debt has he paid down?
The Honourable Bill English.
Oh, Mr Speaker, I think debt as a proportion of GDP is beginning to shrink, and the member can be reassured that with rising surpluses, actual nominal debt will start reducing.
Order.
Point of order.
Order. Order. I require substantially this interjection from my immediate left. Point of order. Right.
Speaker, the Finance Minister was asked how much debt has he paid off. He didn't answer the question.
And I agree, he certainly didn't answer in actual numbers. That's true. He answered proportionately. The member who asked the question at the time didn't object to it. If he had, I would have... order. But the member may well object, but he didn't ask the question. And it's certainly out of time now, but I would have expected him... Order. If Mr Robertson had immediately stood to his feet, I might well have given him that opportunity.
Speaker.
Point of order. Grant.
Mr.
Robertson.
Speaker, at what point in time have you issued a ruling about the immediacy of that? There was no time between when you asked members of this side to be quiet and when Mr. Peters stood up to make a point of order at all.
Order. No, there certainly was time. I have not made such a ruling. I was busy dealing with one of the member's colleagues who was interjecting quite loudly at the time. I will, for the benefit of the member, if he wants to ask the question specifically again, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Grant Robertson, an additional supplementary question.
How much in dollar terms has he paid down debt?
The Honourable Bill English.
Mr. Speaker, none yet. And if I took that member's advice, none ever.
Order. Order. Question